So let's talk about considerations for raised beds. Raised beds, everybody wants them now.
They do.
Can we help them out?
Yes, we certainly can.
All right.
And so I'd say if you have any amount of space, we can make raised bed gardening or container gardening. That we've got some options for you as far as that goes.
Good.
Always my first consideration that I want people to think about is siting for these particular raised beds or containers. For the most part, if we're doing vegetable gardening, we pretty much want to focus on full sun site areas. So like 6 hours of light or more.
Okay.
Would be ideal. If you are going to be growing like cooler season vegetables, leafy greens, things like that, they can tolerate, less access to sun. So in those types of situations, if all you have available to you is, a covered patio that doesn't get much light,
Right.
or you have a small backyard and there's trees all the way around, so you don't have that full sun site area, you could still have a raised bed, but we need to alter what we're growing in it to complement the light availability. So that would be my first consideration for folks thinking about putting in raised bed gardens.
So let's think about the site. Okay, I like
Yes.
that. Okay, first thing first.
And then maybe I would move on to considering, what types of materials are they going to use to grow in. For raised beds, obviously we can use wood products, we can use concrete blocks, metal. There are all types of prefabricated raised bed kits out there
Yes, there
now
are.
that are easy to put together and are long lasting. So going to last, in some cases much longer than a bed constructed with wood might last. So, but definitely those are all options. And then we can also get creative with containers, repurposing items we already have, like plastic 5-gallon buckets.
Yes.
We always want to make sure that those are food grade, rated. Want to make sure that we knew what was in them beforehand before we try to grow things, especially if it's plants we're planning on eating.
Okay.
And the sky is the limit as far as that goes. Metal stock tanks, farm tubs that feed, or protein supplements came in. I see a lot of people reusing objects like that for raised beds and or small container areas. So lots of options as far as what can we grow in.
Okay. So before we go to the next step, right? What about the size of the raised bed? I mean, what would you think would be a good size?
Yes.
Right.
So for raised beds, I really am going to suggest they be at least 12 inches deep. I really prefer them to be deeper than that if we can. I personally like around that 18-inch range, especially if you want to grow deep-rooted crops. Think tomatoes, peppers, those are really deep rooters and are going to benefit from having more soil volume to grow in. Versus many of your cool season crops. If all you have is a shallow raised bed, cool season leafy greens are typically shallowly rooted. So again, working with what you have available to you, I think is what's going to be the key there. I don't want anybody to think, well, my raised bed's only 9 inches deep, I guess I can't grow anything. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
We just got to find the right crop.
Yes. Good. Okay, good. I'm glad you covered that. Okay, so what else should we think about?
Well, so maybe drainage.
Yes, that's going to be big.
Drainage is so important. We need to make sure that we're providing adequate drainage in situations where we are either using containers that don't already have drainage, right? We need to make sure we puncture some holes in there if you're using, buckets or, any kind of hard material on the bottom. But then I really want us to think about drainage even for our raised beds.
Okay.
So if we are putting those on top of an impervious surface, maybe you're installing a raised bed on top of concrete or asphalt or something like that, we need to make sure there's a way for the water to get out of the bottom of those raised beds. So we discourage generally putting plastic on the bottom of your raised beds. You don't want to create that separation layer between whatever media you're filling your bed with and the native soil or whatever's underneath. That would just trap that moisture and create like a soupy, wet raised bed bowl.
A tub. Yeah.
So we definitely want to make sure we're always considering drainage so that water has a way to get away from that root zone. And then I feel like this kind of goes hand in hand when we're talking about drainage is the texture of the media that you're using to fill your raised bed with. Have you ever gotten a call from somebody who's like, man, we built this brand new raised bed and everything we planted in it is just turned yellow and it's not growing. Will you come look at it? And then we get out there and most times that media that they use to fill it has no ability to hold moisture. It's so porous. I've even seen them sometimes where it was just straight bark, like really chipped up. I think they bought the product, they called it like a soil conditioner or something like that, and they filled it with this product, but it's really just finely shredded bark.
Yeah.
And that is not gonna have the water holding capacity that your plants are gonna need to sustain them.
Nor the nutrients.
Exactly, nor the nutrients. So again, with this requires a shift in mindset from growing traditionally in the ground where our soil has nutrients and minerals already present and available in it versus raised bed gardening where we're the ones, we're filling that with media of our choice, right? And those medias do not have those nutrients in them. So whatever water, whatever nutrients that a raised bed is going to get has to come from us, right?
Comes from us. So let's emphasize, again, native soil. So why is that important?
Yes, definitely important because those native soils have that ability to hold water and to exchange nutrients, right, from the soil solution and make that available to the plant. And so we do have that in native soils. But I realize for a lot of people, they feel like they have poor native soil or they have maybe it's a high clay content and they can't turn the soil, or maybe their soil is too sandy. And so for many people, building raised beds is their solution to a difficult native soil. But I want people to understand that it's just a completely different science when you look at it from that perspective, conventional gardening in the ground versus raised bed gardening. So these products that we're using to fill our raised beds with, maybe they are peat-based, maybe they are, think of products like Pro Mix or your typical garden potting mixes. Now they even have some specialty raised bed, garden mixes that have different combinations of things in it. And I'm really excited to see how y'all's research turns out with that.
I am too. And since you mentioned that, so we're using different amendments. So talk about how important amendments are.
Yes. So depending on the amendments that you use, so that's going to affect how much water holding capacity you have or how much porosity you have in that profile. So the ideal mix is gonna be a mixture of all of those products, right? So from our native soils, we have this water holding capacity and nutrient exchange advantage. From those peat-based products, we have the ability to hold on to some moisture, and then including some larger texture organic matter, we're making sure that we have filtration all the way through the profile. So I like a mixture of those things.
I see.
And that's why I think that y'all's research plot out here is going to be so really neat, because we're going to see how the plants react to all those different steps and different degrees of mixes.
Yeah, we can't wait to see what those results are going to be. So is there anything else we need to consider as far as raised beds? Because we do know, they're going to warm up, a lot quicker.
Yes, so your raised beds, those media, we'll use the term soils loosely, right? Some raised beds don't have any soils and then they're completely soilless mixtures. But that is going to warm more quickly than the soil in the ground will. So that can give you, a little leg up on the season if you're doing veggie gardening, folks like that. Also, it can be an advantage to us for season extension because the structure of your raised bed can serve kind of as a foundation to put in low tunnels, like little hoops.
Good point.
That you could put frost covers over, or maybe even shade cloth in the middle of the summertime. And then the other one that I sure don't want us to forget to mention is the advantages for access for limited mobility, right? So
it's important.
it definitely is. So I've seen some really awesome raised beds that were actually built at like waist height, right? So they're lifted off the ground, the growing is happening, suspended in the air, and it's pretty cool. And then also just raised beds are keeping us from having to be on the ground, hands and knees weeding,
hands and knees, right? Yeah,
if we can
which
make
is important.
If we can make some little seats along the edges of those raised beds to make that a little easier on knees and backs.
And it'll be easier to weed and scout those plants for insect pests.
To be reaching into the middle.
I like that.
For sure. And then little tip though.
Okay, little tip.
If accessibility and mobility is an issue for you, and one of the reasons why you want to have a raised bed, don't make them too wide. Because think of all the stress it puts on your body to lean over into the middle. So we want the bed to be no wider than, 2 of your arms, right? So you can reach easily to the center from one side, and you can go over to the other side and reach easily.
Get in the,
That's right.
Get in the garden itself.
That's right.
I like that.
So those are a couple of things that I always just encourage people to think about and consider when they're trying to plan for utilizing raised beds or containers in their home gardens.
Celeste, those are great considerations. So thank you much. We can tell you like those raised beds, don't you?
Oh yeah, it's always fun.
Thank you much. That was good.
welcome.
That was good.